Celebrating 49 years on the air, award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, the USDA's Great American Cotton Plan should have a big effect on Mississippi. Plus, it's not a new idea, but with herd size low and beef prices high, dairy farmers scale up to get in on the action. In Southern Gardening, Eddie's in Vicksburg, Mississippi with 3 fiery beauties. And in our feature, we're in high gear with the economics of rural racing. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Thanks for being with us once again here on Farm Week. Let's jump right in. Recently, the USDA released what it called the Great American Cotton Plan, a rescue initiative designed to save the struggling domestic cotton industry. The plan met with widespread support, including here in Mississippi. The Mississippi Farm Bureau publicly thanked Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins and the USDA for backing the Mississippi cotton industry. The plan will directly affect the state's rural economy, local job market, and ag policy. As one of the nation's leading cotton-producing states, Mississippi stands to be one of the largest beneficiaries of this initiative. An interesting surge in dairy farming, beef on dairy, breeding dairy cows with beef bulls to raise animals strictly for meat production. Not a new idea. Dairy farmers see it as broadening income, especially during beef shortages like the one we're experiencing now. Colleen Bradford-Krantz has more.
In January, the nation's dairy farmers reported keeping 18% fewer heifers to serve as future milk cows than they did 8 years earlier. The downward trend has been consistent over that entire time period.
This is a dynamic situation taking place in dairy farms at collective U.S. dairy industry. Replacement heifers, all dairy heifers, are at the lowest level since 1978. So we swung the pendulum a little too far, making beef on dairy calves.
Beef on dairy refers to when producers breed dairy cows to Angus or other beef bulls. Those calves are then raised for beef instead of future milk production. The strategy has become increasingly popular as beef prices surged in 2023, fueled in part by the smallest national beef herd since 1961.
As beef prices started going up, dairy heifers are actually more valuable in feedlots than they were in dairy barns because it was costing about $2,000 a head to raise them. So that's kind of when the beef on dairy movement began. This past year, National Association of Animal Breeders reported that there were 9.8 million units of beef bull semen sold in the U.S., and almost 80% of that was sold to dairy farmers. So there are a lot of these beef on dairy calves, and their prices are getting higher and higher.
But even with fewer dairy replacement heifers, the U.S. dairy herd overall has grown, increasing by 212,000 head from a year ago.
The dairy cow herd is actually at the highest inventory here in over 30 years at 9.6 million units. If I'm talking to dairy farm audiences, I'll say in some cases the cow's uterus has more value than the cow herself because of the value of the black-hided calf. The only way to grow the dairy herd is to retain dairy cows, so we pulled back on dairy cow culling. What does that mean in U.S. dairy farms? Our cows are getting older.
At Hanson's Dairy in Hudson, Iowa, the Hanson family has been breeding a small percentage of their dairy cows to beef bulls for more than a decade. One of the owners, Blake Hanson, says while most of Hanson's Dairy's beef cross calves are processed with the meat being sold directly to consumers, he has seen prices climb for others who sell at livestock auctions or to packing plants.
Bull calves are incredibly high, Holstein bull calves that is, and then of course the black-hided calves are even higher yet. It's the best thing that's ever happened to the beef farmers and dairy industry as far as I'm concerned. We've been waiting for a long time for this price increase because there's been many years they haven't been making much money at what they do.
Hanson believes the trend could eventually tighten milk supplies and lift milk prices.
That's gonna limit the supply of heifers in general, and then that's also gonna limit the supply of milk down the road because farmers aren't gonna have the supply of heifers to replace their cow herd. For now, the price of milk is somewhat low, but I think by the end of the year or into 2027, we're gonna have some really high milk prices because of the shortage of heifers.
Geiger, who believes USDA's replacement heifer data underrepresents the shortage, says the shrinking pipeline of future milk cows is likely to continue unless beef prices weaken or dairies begin running very short on replacements.
This year, we're going to have 438,000 fewer dairy replacements becoming milk cows compared to last year. And this won't rebound until 2027 when we see an improvement of 285,000.
The shortage is already driving replacement heifer prices sharply higher. Some say that could eventually force some dairy producers to step back a bit from beef on dairy.
We have to change a little bit how we're caring for dairy cows as this herd gets older. Eventually, we have to pay the piper. In this instance, we're gonna have to cull these older cows, and that's why dairy farmers really need to take a look at their replacement inventories. In 2015-16, replacements were at $1,400, $1,500. It was easy to go. It was cheaper to buy them than to raise them. Well, now that price in October went up to a record $3,100.
Oh, you like a nice fancy Springer, guys.
Those are steep prices.
She's going to be a Padwin daughter.
This early May auction in Withee, Wisconsin saw some dairy heifers selling for over $4,000 a piece. Auctions all over dairy country are getting these kinds of prices. Some dairies are already responding by spending a bit more on pre-selected genetics to have female calves.
It's really kind of surprising because milk prices are so low, but we're still seeing record high prices for heifers, especially like the ones ready to go right into the milk line. And personally, our farm is expanding and we are breeding more to using sex semen to try to get more heifer calves, but you're still sacrificing because you could be selling the beef calf as an opportunity cost there.
The question remaining for producers is how long that window stays open.
The first indicator it may be over is when the cattle ranchers start retaining heifers. So I think make hay when the sun is shining, as a lot of farmers will talk about. And this beef on dairy run is the time the sun is shining and it's time to make some hay on it.
Beef on dairy is practiced here in Mississippi, generating a net impact of $2 to $4 million in new high-margin annual revenue for the state's remaining dairy producers.
On the lighter side, from fiery foliage to sweet garden treats, Eddie Smith serving up major yard inspiration next. He's in Vicksburg with 3 tough plants that spice up a landscape.
If you're looking for bold color and dependable structure in your landscape, you don't have to look any further than a well-planned backyard like Tatiana Martin's in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Today, we're stepping into her garden, highlighting 3 standout plants that bring season-long beauty. Let's start with the showstopper, candy corn spirea. This plant absolutely lives up to its name. The new growth emerges in a vivid blend of yellow, orange, and red, almost like a glowing sunset right in your garden beds. As the season progresses, those colors soften slightly, but still hold on to the warm, fiery tone. And just when you think it's done, it sends up bright pink blooms that add another layer of interest. In our southern climate, this spirea handles the heat well and keeps its color without fading. Now, for a plant that brings consistent color without relying on flowers, take a look at Sunjoy Tangelo Barberry. The leaves glow with a rich mix of orange and gold, and the color holds strong even under the intense sun. It forms a tidy, rounded shape, which makes it perfect for borders or as a low hedge. As an added bonus, it's deer resistant and tough as nails, thriving in heat, humidity, and less than perfect soil conditions. To provide year-round structure, Tatiana has incorporated Fire Chief Arborvitae. This compact evergreen brings a completely different texture to the landscape. Its soft, feathery foliage emerges in bright golden tones and gradually deepens into a warm reddish hue as the weather cools. A small grouping of plants like these can transform a corner of your yard into something eye-catching and full of life. I'm Eddie Smith. I look forward to seeing you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a short break, but stick around. Coming up on our Farm Week feature, we cover not just agriculture, but rural life in general. In rural America, folks are headed to the racetrack, and that's more than the high-octane action of NASCAR. It's about the fun and friendships at local dirt tracks. We head to the Bucket List track in Iowa, where drivers pour thousands into their passion, and between them and the fans wind up revving up the local economy. We're in high gear, coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
Mississippi, let's get moving. Join the Magnolia Moves Activity Challenge. The Mississippi State University Extension Service is offering this virtual challenge for individuals of any age or teams of family, colleagues, students, church members, or any other group. Join the 6-week April the 20th through May 31st challenge at no cost, and you'll set your own goals for becoming more active and eating healthier. You'll download the MoveSpring app or use the desktop version. Register for Magnolia Moves, and with automatic tracking, your movements and activities will be captured automatically to give you a clear, real-time view of your progress and achievements. Also, Extension will hold weekly prize drawings for participation across 5 different age categories. So join us and get fit and feel better, eat healthier, manage your weight, and exercise regularly. Magnolia Moves makes fitness accessible, practical, and enjoyable for everyone. Visit msuext.ms/Magnolia Moves to learn more, ask questions, and register today.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations, and their faith. I believe that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. I believe that these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance towards the views of others. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Time for the market report. Row crops falling in price.
And we'll take a closer look at them this week. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then, U.S. crop progress. How are the major crops looking so far? And finally, an expert on Mississippi corn weighs in. So, markets closed on the downswing, all commodities affected. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, soybean oil, up over 3.5 cents. That's more than a 5% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, wheat, down 36.5 cents. That is more than a 5.5% decrease from the previous week. So why are prices going down? Well, one reason is oversupply due to several good harvests. And it looks like we're in for another one. Here's the latest crop progress report to explain. In the latest crop progress report, in the 18 highest corn-producing states, planting 93% complete, 1% higher than this time last year and the 5-year average. Corn emerged at 76%, the same as this time last year and 2% higher than the 5-year average. Condition mostly too early to determine, but so far looking good with 95% reporting fair to excellent. In the 18 highest soybean planting states, Mississippi included, planting 87% complete, 4% higher than this time last year and 7% higher than the 5-year average. Soybeans emerged at 65%, 4% higher than this time last year and 8% higher than the 5-year average. Condition also looking positive, with 95% also reporting fair to excellent. In the 15 highest cotton-producing states, Mississippi also included, planting 66% complete, 2% higher than last year, but 1% lower than the 5-year average. Squaring, which is the forming of the bulbs that will eventually become bolls, at 7%, the same as last year and the 5-year average. In the 6 highest rice-producing states, Mississippi included, planting 98% complete, 2% higher than this time last year and 1% higher than the 5-year average. Rice emerged at 87%, the same as last year, but 2% higher than the 5-year average. Rice condition, like corn and soybeans, looking good, with 95% reporting fair to excellent. So let's focus on one of those commodities, corn. Here in Mississippi, it's our #2 row crop and therefore very important to our economy. So how are things looking and how can farmers keep their crops in top shape? Extension corn specialist Dr. Eric Larson has some advice.
Well, we're reaching tasseling stage, and we've been raining for the past, I don't know how many, since middle of last week anyway. A lot of growers are waiting to put out their tassel application of corn and are concerned about timing of that tassel application of corn, of urea, because the corn is tasseling now and they really don't have favorable conditions for application to occur during the weather that we have right now with saturated fields, water standing everywhere. That's not conducive to strong nitrogen management, and most folks know that, but they've got a conundrum because the crop is at tassel stage. So is tassel stage really that critical to apply that nitrogen at? And my answer is 99% of the time it is not. We've already applied our normal application up to that time frame. The corn is only utilizing about 60 to 65% of its seasonal nitrogen at that time, and a application at tassel is purely to supplement and make sure that they don't run out before the end of the season. So if that's the case, then the timing coinciding or being pre-tassel, literally we call this application the pre-tassel application, it's not dependent to be pre-tassel unless we're deficient at that time, and it's rare that that is the case. So we have ample time after tasseling. There's actually some advantages to put it out after tassel. You actually probably increase your seasonal efficiency because you're putting it out and you're avoiding the conditions that we're having this week. That's the whole purpose of putting out a mid-season application or at tassel application, is to avoid wet weather and soil saturation, which leads to catastrophic nitrogen losses during the course of the season. So applying it after tassel will help avoid some of that. You actually don't have a whorl present any longer after tassel, so that you don't have as much leaf burn associated with a granular application from an airplane, because you don't have a whorl intercepting a large number of granules and collecting that and causing that leaf burn. The other question I get a lot is, well, what about pollination? Is the granules going to burn the silks and cause an issue with pollination on parts of the ear? And again, the answer is no. The primary thing there is, despite burning a few silks on the corn plant, I've literally taken this with an undergraduate student a couple years ago and went out in the morning and clipped all the silks off of an ear of corn, came to the Delta, came back 12 hours later, and they'd go, how long do you think those silks are going to be at the end of the day after 12 hours? They'd grown nearly 1.5 inches over that 12-hour period. So the amount of the amount of burn that a single or several granules could cause there is fairly inconsequential, because the silks simply continue growing over the time period until they get pollinated. So that's not going to be a limiting factor as far as pollinating those individual kernels on a corn plant.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Mike?
A new study says small-town racetracks pump more than $69 billion a year into communities across the country. From auto parts to hospitality, we look at the financial footprint left behind by the Dusty Oval. John Torpy has the story.
Underneath the fun and excitement surrounding the rituals of dirt track racing at local speedways are the spinning wheels of economic good small-town racetracks bring to their communities.
Oftentimes people think of racing as the big super speedways, which we all see and know and love. But the fact is that there's 1,500 other smaller racetracks all around the country serving our communities. And so
Karen Bailey Chapman is a senior vice president at Specialty Equipment Market Association, an automotive industry trade group that supports motorsports. To help shine a light on the fiscal importance of the sport, SEMA set out to quantify how weekly events at rural racetracks contribute to the economies of surrounding communities.
For every race car you see out there, there's parts that are being sold by manufacturers around the country. There's venues that also employ people to make it all happen. And then, of course, the outer part of that impact is, you know, from the hospitality perspective. And so we really wanted to really focus in on what the story behind the story is, and the fact that it's, you know, I think there's a lot more that goes into what you see every weekend at your local racetrack than just the cars racing around.
According to a 2025 study by SEMA subsidiary Performance Racing Industry, motorsports across the country contributes over $69 billion to the U.S. economy. The study revealed that in Iowa, the total economic output of motorsports neared $1.7 billion last year.
Welcome to the high banks of Marshalltown.
In Marshall County, Iowa, home to the Marshalltown Speedway, Performance Racing Industry calculates the financial boost from motorsports to the community at more than $15 million annually.
You know, for 63 consecutive years, there's always been racing in Marshalltown. It's always happened. What these racers bring when they come to town, they're stopping at their gas stations, they're stopping at restaurants. It does impact the economics of the city.
With its high bank turns, the quarter-mile Marshalltown Speedway is nicknamed the bucket list track, a track drivers want to race at least once. The attraction to the oval track and its legacy have helped cement the Speedway's relationship with the city of Marshalltown.
And we are lucky here. We have a lot of community businesses that support the racetrack.
From replacement parts and fresh tires to fuel and food, owning and driving any race car can be an expensive investment, which often only yields the thrill of racing.
Some of these guys have got, you know, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 invested in their race car, which is, you know, for the weekly racer is a hobby. It's not, you know, they're not getting rich. They're doing it to have fun. They're doing it. They're passionate about it.
Van Sickle adds the passion for motorsports can be seen as a linchpin connecting the drivers and the fans.
The reality is you can't go drive a car at 100 mile an hour into a corner out on the street, but you can come and watch somebody here do it.
You don't really have the opportunity to sort of overanalyze stuff. That's, in a nutshell, why I love coming dirt racing.
So we appreciate you all coming out. We appreciate you all being here. We want to wish everybody a lovely time.
Pat Rachel's, China Grove, North Carolina. Original hometown was Knoxville, Iowa. I mean, the whole experience is awesome, right? I mean, I love everything about it. I mean, my favorite part probably is in the heat of the race. Everything happens fast. You don't really have time to weigh your options, right? You're just making decisions and going. Things are flying at you, and it's always different. Every lap's different. That's probably my favorite part about it.
Pat Rachel's is a second-generation owner-driver who had a hold of a steering wheel before he could walk. Rachel's has carried his love of racing into adulthood as a senior engineer for Toyota Racing Development in North Carolina. His work supports multiple teams in NASCAR and other professional Toyota racing crews. When the opportunity presents itself, Rachel's finds his way to his favorite dirt track in the country, the Southern Iowa Speedway.
So it's almost two completely different worlds. At the NASCAR level, everything is so fine-tuned, and there's so many people and resources behind a single car. Millions of dollars and you know, tens or hundreds of engineers and mechanics. At this level, it's you and a couple of your buddies do it all. You just have to go with it. You know, you make it work and you get to the racetrack, and everybody at the racetrack is in the same situation when you race, you know, at a local level like that. And that really makes the camaraderie tighter because everybody's living what you're living to get to the racetrack, and so you end up developing some really good friendships.
You know, the racing's about family. If you've got a racetrack in your community and you've always thought, why should I go? Just go to support it. It supports community, it supports the people that are passionate about it, and a lot of times it is a business, and it supports that business, and it keeps that avenue open for the people who really enjoy it every week.
Great story. And yes, car racing thrives in our state. It's a vital economic engine for small town Mississippi. Well, next time on Farm Week, you've heard it before. One man's trash, another man's treasure.
Politics aside, climate change is a priority for many, and the door is opening wider to capitalize on opportunities like methane, a greenhouse gas that traps more heat in the atmosphere than CO2.
Ag waste is one source of methane used by one company to produce cheaper electricity, turning trash into power. Next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.